Send us brighter days. Send us blue skies. Send us healing ways to live. Send us, if you please, more time. We have been foolish so long, treating each other so bad, wasting all the gifts you give, making this old world so sad. Envoyez-nous des jours meilleurs. Envoyez-nous des ciels bleus. Envoyez-nous sur un chemin de paix. Envoyez-nous, s'il vous plaît. Send us brighter days. Send us blue skies. Send us healing ways to live. Help us in our heart, forgive.
Okay, welcome everyone. Bienvenue tout le monde. Like the beautiful song that we just heard, I'll be speaking in French after in English for the introduction, and then I'll hand it over to Sister Kaira for her sharing on We Were Made for This Time. Yeah, that song was from Eric Bibb and Habib Kwata. Send Us Brighter Days from Album Brothers and Bamako, just in case, for the curious mind. Friends are still arriving in the room, so we don't wait when we practice, we just breathe and smile, so please don't wait. We can just settle into our bodies, our breath. It's encouraged if we're in the room, if we can, to turn on our video. vous êtes encouragé d'allumer votre vidéo si vous êtes dans la salle. On est à la fois dans la salle de Zoom et au YouTube. We're also broadcasting live on YouTube, so there's people joining from YouTube also. And this talk will be recorded as 270 people registered for this talk, so we're very happy that there's a curiosity and interest. On est presque 300 personnes qui sont inscrites pour cette partage, donc on est très heureux d'avoir cet intérêt sur le sujet aujourd'hui. People are still arriving, Kaira. So
Est-ce que tu peux mettre
et si vous êtes dans la salle, vous pouvez éteindre votre audio. If you're in the room, make sure that your audio is turned off. On va juste commencer avec un moment de l'arrêt. We'll start with a moment to arrive, and I invite you just to put yourself in a comfortable posture and bring your mind back to your body and your breath. And simply take your time to settle, like a pebble that's going to settle into the riverbank. Je vous invite à juste prendre ce premier moment pour arriver. Vous pouvez simplement revenir à votre corps et l'esprit, comme un petit caillou qui va tomber dans un lac. We'll listen to 3 sounds of the bell. On va écouter 3 sons de la cloche. We can gently and easily bring our mindfulness back into the present moment. On peut doucement, avec beaucoup d'hésiter, ramener notre conscience dans l'instant présent. Welcoming the sounds that can arrive in our mind. Accueillir le son qui peut émerger. Coming back to our body and our breath. Revenez à votre souffle et votre cœur. And becoming aware of our intention and what brings us together in this moment. Et aussi prendre conscience de nos intentions et ce qui nous emmène ensemble dans cet instant. So welcome everyone. Bienvenue tout le monde. Pour cette première partie, je vais faire une petite présentation de Kaira. I'll just shortly introduce Kaira. Et après, on aura le partage de Kaira pendant un moment, ou aussi elle va prendre un petit moment pour un échange à la fin, je crois. So after I'll hand it over to Kaira for whatever she wishes to share. Je vais juste brièvement présenter Kaira comme je peux le comprendre pour ma expérience de Kaira. I'll shortly introduce Kaira just from my own experience, my own meeting with Kaira. I first met Kaira in 1999 or 1998 maybe. And we were sitting outside in San Francisco on the day of mindfulness that Thai was giving to thousands of people on that day. And I had the great honor before to sit with Alice Walker and her girlfriend that day, and we were exchanging. And shortly after, I turned around and I walked, and I saw Kaira, and we exchanged for the first time. J'ai eu ce grand plaisir de rencontrer Kaira il y a une vingtaine d'années à San Francisco, où c'était une journée de pleine conscience de notre maître. Il a animé pour un grand nombre de personnes à San Francisco. Et j'étais en train de converser avec un grand écrivain américain qui s'appelle Alice Walker, sa petite amie. Et juste après ça, j'ai tourné le dos et j'ai marché. J'ai rencontré Kaira. Et it was at this moment that we first spoke, and I found out that you were going to go to Plum Village after that. I don't know if you remember, but I remember this moment very well because you told me you just finished at Stanford, I believe, and I was just so happy to have more people my age coming to Plum Village in those days, as we were quite young aspirants on the path. J'étais très content de voir cet échange avec Kaira parce que j'avais su qu'elle vient de finir ses études à Stanford, université. Elle avait cette aspiration d'aller au village de Prunier pour le retraite d'hiver. So 25 years more, almost more than 25 years after, we're still here and we're still going. And we will always also have this great honor that you can be here and to share with us, with the community here in Château Bleu. Donc, presque 25 ans après, on est toujours sur le chemin, toujours aussi souriant et brillant sur le chemin. Et on est très heureux et très honoré de t'avoir parmi nous avec la communauté bien-aimée de Château Bleu. Here at Château Bleu, we call ourselves the beloved community. I discovered at Plum Village they're trying to create beloved community units now. I think maybe we're kind of like the pioneers of that. So because we started about 10 years ago. Donc, so I'll let Kaira take over and je vais traduire. Donc, si vous avez besoin de traduction, vous pouvez simplement appuyer en bas pour l'option en français et vous pouvez écouter la traduction. Et à partir de là, je laisse Kaira prendre le relais. Je vais nous quitter.
Shall I start? Yeah? Okay. Bonjour à tous, à toutes. Je suis très contente d'être parmi vous francophones. C'était un grand... longtemps que j'ai été comme ça, un groupe francophone. Je suis très heureux. Just saying it's such a pleasure to be in a French-speaking environment again. It's been a very long time for me, so it makes me very happy.
I'm leaving, Captain, I've got to go.
So let me just check that everyone who needs to hear in French, are you fine? Can we jump in? It's all okay? Yes, okay, great. So I know that you all are finishing up a retreat, Love in Action, and I'm very happy to be able to join you in this last day of your retreat. And what I'd like to share about is the practice of equanimity. Within the larger framing of knowing that we were made for these times. So this theme of a book that I wrote. And how can we really meet difficult times and draw from the well that we really do have inside of us. So my dad is on this call, Al Lingo, very happy he's here. And I mentioned him because a few weeks ago I got married, and there were a lot of unexpected things happening right before the wedding. So my mom got COVID and couldn't come. About 10 people dropped out of canceled because they got COVID. The bartender, the singer at the wedding, everything, there were a lot of problems right before. And my dad was flying in about a week before the wedding, and we were talking on the phone, and he said, well, Kaira Jewel, we are people who were made for times like these. So he was reminding me the title of this book, that whatever is happening, however unexpected, however disappointing, however, however, unwanted, we can touch into a deeper truth that we wouldn't be here if we weren't meant for these times, and that we can be on a path, we can cultivate our hearts, our minds, so that we can stand up tall and strongly and meet whatever this moment has to bring. And that wedding ended up being just perfect, Someone volunteered to be the bartender. We found another singer all of a sudden. We included my mom in our thoughts as part of the ceremony. Everything went just as it needed to go. It wasn't how we expected it, but it was beautiful. So what is it that helps us to meet moments that are difficult, that are unexpected, that are decentering? So equanimity is a practice that can help us to stay rooted when the storms of our life start to blow us in every direction. It is actually a power. Equanimity is a force. And it's also a face of love. So we are facing multiple crises, polycrises of this lingering pandemic, climate chaos, racism, economic, political breakdown. And we need power. We need to be able to draw on something in times of crisis, many crises, intersecting, interlocking. So an important power that we each have, that we can each cultivate, is this aspect of love, which is equanimity. So there's a monk and scholar, Venerable Analayo, who offers a kind of metaphor of equanimity. So he's talking about the 4 aspects of true love, the Brahma Viharas, the 4 immeasurable minds of love, which are loving kindness or loving friendliness. The second one is compassion, the ability to bring love to the experience of suffering. The third is joy, appreciative joy, being able to bring joy to ourselves, to others. And the 4th element of true love is equanimity, or as Thich Nhat Hanh, our teacher Thai, talks about it, is as inclusiveness. So this monk Analayo uses the sun as a metaphor for describing these 4 faces of love. And he says, for loving friendliness, it's like the sun at noon, which is bright and strong, shining on everyone. And for compassion, karuna, it's the setting sun, the sun in the evening, which meets the darkness of suffering with tenderness and care. And mudita, joy, is like the morning sunrise, this brightening up of everything in its path, moving upwards with freshness and inspiration. And then the image of upekkha, equanimity, is actually of the full moon, reflecting the light of the sun in a vast, cloudless night sky. So in this metaphor, the loving kindness, compassion, joy, they all have a warm quality, which is compared to the actual sun, whether it's midday, sunset, sunrise. But equanimity has a cooler quality. It's the full moon, which only reflects the light of the sun. This cooler quality doesn't mean it's not full of caring, it's not full of warmth, but it's a quality that helps actually balance the other 3 faces of love, so that we don't burn out in our caring, in expressing these other qualities of love to others. So it's distinct because it keeps us grounded. Without equanimity, our compassion can become compassion fatigue. Our love can perhaps take us into attachment or overwhelm. Our care for the world can bring us to be overwhelmed. We can outpour to such an extent that we become exhausted or overly identified with the situation. But equanimity, that ability to reflect the light of the sun, It keeps us resourced, it keeps us in our center. So the word upeksha in Sanskrit, upekka in Pali, it's translated often as equanimity in English, non-attachment, non-discrimination, impartiality, tolerance, letting go. So it's formed from the prefix upa, that means over, all around, and the root ik, meaning to look, to see. So it's the capacity to see the full picture, to see all around, like we're standing on top of a high mountain and we can see all the sides and see the whole situation in its entirety, not taking sides. So it's the ability to see and not be caught by what we see. In India, the word was sometimes used to mean to see with patience, right? To see with understanding. So an example is like if people are speaking offensively to us, offensive words, if we know not to take them personally, then we are less likely to react to what is being said. And we can remain at ease. And this love is compared to the love of a grandparent. The love of a parent can be sometimes, attached and can cause suffering to the one who's loving, to the one who's being loved. But a grandparent loves their grandchildren, but because they've had experience with their own children, they are less likely to be caught up in the drama of their grandchildren's lives. So they still love, but there's more peace, there's more stability in that love. There's that long view because they've been through it in their own lives with their own children. So equanimity can protect these warmer expressions of love so that we can deepen them and nurture them more fully. So it's not dry, it's not indifferent, but it's very affectionate. It's a very tangible presence, like a loving grandparent, but just free from the reactivity, from the anxiety. And our teacher, Master Thich Nhat Hanh, or Thai, as his teachers call him, Vietnamese for teacher, he adds another dimension to this definition of equanimity, teaching that upeksha is also the practice of inclusiveness. So it's this ability to be firm and at the same time not taking sides, and to include many perspectives, to include many versions of the same story, right? That story of the blind men who encounter an elephant. Maybe you've heard of this story, and they each encounter different aspects of the elephant, and one encounters the trunk and says, "Oh, this is a snake." One encounters the leg and says, "This is a trunk of a tree." One encounters the tail and says, "This is a broom." One encounters the skin, the side of the elephant, and says, "This is a wall." They each see it from their own perspective. They each perceive the elephant differently. But equanimity, this inclusive perspective, is able to take all of these different perspectives and see they each have some aspect of truth and how to include all of them. Then you get the real picture, the full picture, right? Not in its parts. And I remember when I was attending Thai as a novice nun, and he was asked to sign a petition against abortion. And the people coming to him, I think, expected he would sign with no resistance, because as a monk, as a Zen teacher, he's supporting reverence for life and not killing and the way of nonviolence. But he refused to sign the petition. He said, it's not inclusive. He said, it's dogmatic, insisting that one way is right in all situations. And he said, I have experience working with refugees, people escaping from Vietnam after the war, where he knew people had been in many terrifying and traumatic situations, including rape. And he said, to force someone to have a child they didn't want, conceived from incest or rape or many different circumstances of suffering, he said that could be very tragic for the mother, for the child. And so he emphasized the need for openness, not being ideological or dogmatic or imprisoned by our views. And so his refusal to sign the petition was, to me, a very powerful teaching of caring with equanimity, with inclusiveness, trying to have as full a picture of the situation as possible, not just one view only. So to be inclusive means we give space, we give ourselves space, we give a situation space. But how do we do that in this world that is so full of suffering and tragedy in this moment? I mean, it's not that new, but it's intensifying, right? The suffering has been there in many ways, in many places in the world, but it's getting hotter and hotter, literally, temperature-wise, but also in terms of the intensity of violence, the intensity of uncertainty, and suffering. So how do we be inclusive of this reality and not be overwhelmed and flattened by this reality? So Thai wrote, when he shares this story, he says, when I was a novice, I couldn't understand why, if the world is filled with suffering, the Buddha has such a beautiful smile. All of the statues of the Buddha have the Buddha smiling very peacefully. So Thai writes, why isn't he disturbed by all the suffering? Later, I discovered that the Buddha has enough understanding, calm, and strength. That is why the suffering does not overwhelm him. He is able to smile to suffering because he knows how to take care of it and to help transform it. We need to be aware of the suffering, but retain our clarity, calmness, and strength so we can help transform the situation. The ocean of tears cannot drown us if karuna is there, compassion. That is why the Buddha's smile is possible. This smile of the Buddha is rooted in equanimity. and seeing reality from all sides. And so as a nun in Plum Village, when I was practicing once in Deer Park, both Carole and Dat were also monastics at Deer Park one time. So I had a similar question coming up for me because I was doing a meditation that we often did in our community. And the last exercise of this meditation was breathing in, I dwell in the present moment. Breathing out, I know it is a wonderful moment. And I had done this practice many times, and I maybe was doing it a bit superficially. But on this day, I did it, and I suddenly was stuck. I thought, how, with all the violence, hatred, inequality, the preventable tragedies that are happening in this present moment all over the world, how can I say this is a wonderful moment? It was a moment of truth, of genuinely feeling confronted, because I just blindly practiced these words before, but now I was like, wait a minute, how can this be true? And so I just sat in the question of it, in the pain of this kind of koan. And I started to see that along with all of the suffering and pain happening in the world, there are also many beings that are supporting others in the present moment. There are many hearts of compassion opening to address, to relieve suffering, to bring healing, to care for others. There are people who are courageous and standing up for what they believe is right, maybe sacrificing a lot to do that. There are people protecting the oceans, the beings in the waters, people cleaning up rivers and beaches, advocating for those who are oppressed, protecting forests, replanting in places that are dry and desolate. And I just touched that as true as the suffering is, it is also as true that everywhere, in every corner of the planet, people are quietly doing things that no one else wants to do. Caring for forgotten people, forgotten places, for species that are threatened, doing what needs to be done. And so then when I saw that part of reality, I was able to touch that, yes, present moment is also a wonderful moment. That our suffering doesn't have to disappear for beauty to be there. Life is about all of these things, the beauty and the terror. So it was a moment for me of cultivating equanimity, inclusiveness, this ability to hold the whole picture, not pushing one part out. They all coexist, and with equanimity we can meet them all. So equanimity is a kind of, maybe it's a kind of shield that helps us to see the truth without being burned by the truth. There's a story from the Greek mythology of Perseus. He was sent to slay the monster Medusa. There's a whole other interpretation of Medusa, actually, as a very powerful symbol of the divine feminine. But that's not the version of the story. So he's sent to kill this monster, Medusa. She has this power of anyone who looks at her, she can turn them into stone. And so all the people that have gone to try to kill her in the past, they looked at her and she turned them into stone. So Perseus was sent to do this task, and he was told, you have to be very careful. You have to get close to her, but without looking at her. And so what did he do? He used his shield to look into the shield and then to see Medusa in the reflection of the shield. So without looking at her directly, he was able to get close enough to her to kill her. Well, I would like to see a different version of the story where she doesn't need to be killed, but in any case, this shield that protects him, you could say Medusa is all of the toxicity in our world today, right? If we watch the news from morning till night, that's like looking at Medusa with no barrier. It can turn us to stone. If we are only taking in the suffering in the world without this shield of equanimity, we will be turned into stone. We will be immobilized. We will be frozen. We will lose our energy to be able to act, to be able to do something in response to this very difficult world that we live in. But this shield that allows us to get close, to see the suffering, to understand the suffering without being overwhelmed by it, is equanimity, right? It's this protection that helps us to be in this burning world without getting burned. To look at what's going on and to say, I'm supposed to be here. I have what it takes to meet this moment, to be in these times. Right? So we need to ground ourselves in something to be able to even live in these times. So one of the things that equanimity offers us is the possibility of taking action, of acting with love. This is the focus of this retreat, love and action. But with freedom, this ability to see the whole picture, right? So we do something because we see that it's the right thing to do, not because we know what's going to be the outcome or because it's going to turn out the way we want it to turn out. We take action, we act with love because that's what we have to do. Not because it's guaranteed to work or because things are all going to work out perfectly. So when Thai was a younger monk in Vietnam, he started the School of Youth for Social Services, training young people to be social workers. And they went out into rural areas of Vietnam to help build schools, to work on improving agricultural practices, and supporting the villagers. So they were there when, in one particular village they were working in, was bombed by the US Army. There were said to be Viet Cong in that village. The whole village was bombed. So the social workers, they rebuilt the village. And it was bombed again. And they rebuilt it again. And it was bombed a third time. And they rebuilt it again. Can you imagine? What kind of strength to not give in to despair? I'm sure they were thinking, why are we keeping on rebuilding this village? It keeps getting bombed. But that is the power of equanimity. You love people. This is their place where they know how to work the land and raise animals and care for their children, and you just keep going. You keep rebuilding, because to not do that is to give in to despair. You don't rebuild because you expect everything to work out the way you want it to. That's the power that equanimity gives you. I have to do this. This is the right thing to do, regardless of the outcome. That gives you energy so that you don't burn out. We burn out because we have attachment to what the outcome will be. I'm going to love this person, and so they're going to love me back. If they don't love us back, then we feel everything we did was in vain. But with equanimity, we can say, I'm going to love this person. I hope they'll love me back. But if they don't, I know that it's still the right thing to love this person, no matter what. And so if they don't love us back, we know we haven't wasted our time, because there's more love in the world now. And maybe we'll get our love from some other place, with our heart open, with our heart grounded in equanimity. It doesn't need to come from that other person. That's freedom. Equanimity gives us freedom to be true to ourselves and not wait on something from outside to fill us up, to make everything okay. It is okay. If we can see that big view, yes, there is pain, yes, there's suffering, and there is wonder, and there is beauty, all at the same time, then when difficulties arise, we can stay the course. So I'm going to close with a story. This is a story from El Salvador. And it is the story of Archbishop Romero. Oscar Romero. So equanimity, inclusiveness, it gives us courage. The Buddha said, when you have equanimity, you have a mind of immeasurable peace. When you have peace, you have a lot of freedom. You're not so afraid. So I watched a film, Romero, about the life of Archbishop Oscar Romero. He was made a saint in the Catholic Church. He was willing to give up his life for what he saw was right and just in the midst of a great moment of violence and terror in his country in the 1970s and 1980s. And that courage that he had came from the groundedness, the seeing with patience of inclusiveness, of equanimity, the seeing from all around. One of the most powerful scenes for me in this movie is when the military, which had become stronger and stronger, it took over the main church in the capital, San Salvador. Archbishop Romero needs to come into this church to take the Blessed Sacrament, which for him and his community, it's the very presence of God, the bread that's offered in Holy Communion. The soldiers have occupied this church and they mock him. They don't let him come to the altar. They shoot the whole altar with bullets. When he insists he has to get this bread. So this deeply shocks Romero. The soldiers push him violently out of the church, laughing at him and saying, "This church belongs to us, you get out of here." And he's the bishop, right? So he stands at the car, he's about to leave. The driver is at the wheel of the car. But then he closes the car door and he looks at all the local people around him who are standing outside of the church. They were ready to celebrate Mass with him. And he's unable to leave. So he goes back towards the church. And the soldiers, they lower their guns. They point their guns at him. And the archbishop just continues calmly walking towards the church, saying, "If you must, then shoot me." So now the soldiers are the ones that are shocked at his courage, at his determination. He walks right past them and goes in and he picks up the Blessed Sacrament. It's all broken and scattered on the floor. The soldiers don't know what to do because he's not afraid to die at that point. So he picks up the sacrament, he drives off, he comes back in a few minutes dressed in his special vestments that you wear to celebrate Mass. There are now a few hundred people standing in the square. And following Romero, they all move together into the church. The soldiers are still occupying the church with all of their guns, pointed at all the people walking, and they just keep walking. And faced with that kind of determination, that kind of powerful inclusiveness and equanimity, the soldiers lower their guns. Everyone walks into church. The army backs down in the face of their non-fear. They are a peaceful, powerful group of hundreds of people coming to pray. They can't stop them. The soldiers can't stop them. So Romero goes up to the altar and he begins the Mass. It's such a moving scene to watch, a kind of fearlessness. So with his actions, he's saying, this is what is right. This is what I need to do. You need to do what you need to do. If you need to shoot me, shoot me. What I do doesn't depend on what you do or don't do. That's that kind of immense freedom. No? I have to do what I have to do, whatever comes. No, I'm not going to base my actions on, whether I'm going to be safe or whether I'm going to be comfortable. I'm going to do what I have to do. Right? This is what wonderful Congressman John Lewis would talk about. He passed away a few years ago. He says we have to get into good trouble. Don't be afraid to get into good trouble. And he talked about what we really need to do, even as we get older in our lives, is get in the way. My dad, he really took this as his marching orders, as his direction for his life. On my dad's calendar, his online calendar, every day it says, get in the way, get in the way, get in the way. So I'll close by reading you a poem from Thai. This is a beautiful poem called Recommendation. And it's about his experience working to end the war in Vietnam. He was seen as a traitor from all sides. The North considered him to be pro-American. The South considered him to be pro-communist. He was an enemy of everyone because he was calling for peace. They considered him an enemy, but he didn't consider anyone an enemy. He didn't subscribe to any ideology. He just wanted the suffering of the war to end. And just because of that, he was seen as an enemy. So that is the challenge that we encounter when we practice equanimity. If you don't take sides, then anyone who's taken a side may see you as an enemy. They misunderstand. You're not taking sides. But never, even so, you keep going. Even if people don't understand why you take that position, you keep going. So that's what this poem is about. And actually, I think I'll sing it to you. And then maybe Dot can read the French version. It was put to music by Catholic monks, this poem in the US from Weston Priory. Promise me this day, while the sun is just overhead, even as they strike you down with a mountain of hate and violence. Remember, brother, man is not our enemy. Just your pity, just your love, invincible, limitless. Hatred will never let you face the beast in man. And one day when you face this beast alone, your courage intact, your eyes kind, out of your smile will bloom a flower. And those who love you will behold you across 10,000 worlds of dying and birth. Alone again, I'll go on, with bent head, but knowing that even though they strike you down with a mountain of hate and violence, remember, brother, man is not our enemy. Alone again, I'll go on, with bent head, but knowing the sun and moon will continue to shine along the way. Ooh, 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 ooh.
So thank you, sister.